Hey, well, hello. Um,
Hello.
how are you?
How am I? I'm good today. Yeah, I'm pretty. The sun is shining. It's cold. It's very cold, but I feel that spring is upon us. My heart feels that spring is coming. And I actually even enjoyed the cold, which some days I'm like, go away, cold, And today I was like, yes, the cold is making me alive.
I love that. I feel like yesterday was definitely one of those days that I was like, I hate the cold because the wind was,
Yeah, it's just one or the other.
yeah, yeah, totally.
How are you?
Well, why don't I'm great actually. I'm doing also similarly. I feel like the spring energy is definitely feeling very potent right now. So I'm feeling, yeah, inspired. Energy feels like it's moving quickly. So yeah, it's a good time to be alive.
Good time to be alive.
Yeah.
Yes, in this specific moment. It's good to remember that, even with all the terrible things that are happening in the world, it's like, yeah, I feel like that call to aliveness and call to joy is so essential that we keep our connection.
Yeah, I think my biggest mantra, we're like diving right in, but it's fine.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, you know
The
me.
biggest,
I don't know how to do small talk.
this is like
Don't
this
even
is us. Like
talk
this
to
is just, yeah, if you know either of us, you know this is how we go. But yeah, I think like I've just been thinking a lot about zooming in and really kind of reminding myself of that mantra, and saying, I could zoom out and look at everything, but I could also zoom in and be really focused on what's going on in my actual environment around me. Um,
me.
and there's, obviously times for both, but I feel like right now I'm in a season of zooming in.
Yeah, I when you say that, I see your feet on the earth. It's like
Oh yeah.
feet planted on the earth here, this moment, this place. Excited to chat to you. Thank you for the invitation.
Of course, yeah. And why don't you introduce yourself? Let everyone know who you are, what you do.
Hello, everyone. Hi, out there. I'm Saga Blaine. I always say that Saga means story, and I'm a storyteller. That's my little cliche thing. I have many hats. Storytelling is one of them. I have a healing modality called flow form, which is about the idea is that we all have access to flow, which is like our origin point, flow state, the divine, the sacred, many words for it, mystery. And then we are here to transmute that into form, which is anything that we externalize into the world. And it can be something literally like form, like a ceramic pot, or it can be like a piece of legislation or a relationship, or even just the way our body moves in space or the words that we use. It's really like our authentic expression. And the bridge between flow and form is the heart.
Mm,
So, really, what my modality is, it's about opening the heart so that the we can access the flow and move it into form and be our authentic, expressive beings. Um, I think in layman's terms, I might get called a creativity coach, which I'm happy to have that title too. But yeah, so I write stories and I help people with their creative, spiritual um, connection and how that expresses into the world. And a lot of that is about repatterning survival systems, which have to do with our childhood experiences. So basically, the reason that we don't transmute our flow into authentic form is because as we grew up, we had to protect ourselves from certain things. And those survival systems, which were so important, they allowed us to survive that moment. They allowed us to live. There were actually creative acts to allow us to move beyond that moment, suddenly become the thing that is stopping us,
mm,
blocking the path of our authentic expression, the place that we hold a lot of our shame or our fear or our anger or our depression or any of these are kind of the qualities, right? They can get lodged in.
definitely. It's interesting because I just was reading, I'm having this new ritual for past like 6 months or so. I've been, trying to start my day with a bit of reading and coffee. And currently I'm reading Joe Dispenza's book, Becoming Supernatural. And
Mm.
but what's so cool about it is he talks about the chakra centers. He, goes through each one and, you know, I'm no stranger. You're no stranger to the chakra system. You know what resonates and what correlates with which chakra, et cetera, et cetera. But the way that he laid it out felt so interesting to me. And as you were just speaking about this, you know, these things that sort of happen, this trauma or like the emotions that kind of get stuck in the body as you're a child, he explained it so well within those three lower chakras, where he said, you know, a lot of times as humans, we get sort of trapped in the first, second, or third chakra, which, you know, it's either your some sort of
Mhm.
sexual trauma or sexual repression, or you weren't really allowed to be creative or, you know, speak your truth or, you know, have that sort of
Mhm.
autonomy and ego development. And then there's
Mhm.
like this third one of kind of, again, like kind of this like ego confidence. And the
Mhm.
way he just
And
said
also
it,
even just like material survival, like that root chakra,
yes,
place of like, am
right,
I okay? Am I actually okay to be here? Am I safe? And in
yeah,
my archetypes, we can go into, these three archetypes. The first one is the floating star seed, and it's really about the most primal types of trauma where your original environment, like ages 0 to 5, was fundamentally not safe, not safe.
yes, right,
And so there's like the part of the spirit cannot actually, as the spirit is coming down, to plant itself into the earth, into this body, into the here and now, feet on the ground. It's actually not safe to do that at that moment. And so it stays sort of floating in the ether.
mm-hmm.
And there are like a lot of gifts to this archetype. It's like, I feel like anybody who sees ghosts is this.
That, yeah,
Because there's like your access to the etheric realms is wide open, so creativity and imagination, but it's much safer to remain floating or sort of always moving from place to place, from job to job, from relationship to relationship, whatever it is, like the Rolling Stone idea, than staying anchored
right,
here in what in yourself first and then here on the earth. That's like really really scary because that wasn't safe originally, and
right.
so that archetype has to then to root down. But so anyways, that was my long spiel talking about the chakras. But does he map them to childhood development? Because I feel like I've seen, I forget who it is, someone does this where it's basically like those early years. Like if you're like a baby, you think about its root chakra, right? It's like literally all you're here to do is survive, is to eat, drink, like feel in your body. What is this body? Your systems come online. And I have two children, so I've seen this, like, it's amazing to watch and to be part of this journey. And then you get to be a toddler, and then it's like your emotional center starts to explode, right? And you suddenly, it's like the tantrums, the big feelings, and then you kind of get to be older, and then your sense of self and your imagination, like if you think about 6-year-olds as being so peak in their like, heart and crown chakra spaces, and
Totally.
that you're like literally like a chakra tree growing through
Developing,
childhood
right,
into full expression.
right.
And yeah, so if something happens at any of those moments, it
Yes.
will like set
Yeah.
off an imbalance essentially.
Right, right. And I think like it's just so interesting to see those kind of correlations between, you know, these different discoveries of like these systems and how these things work, but it all kind of stems back to that same thing of like keeping that stuff in check and like, you know, constantly checking back to see like where there might be holes or where there might be like a lack of alignment. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, I just found that really funny that I was just reading this morning and then we're having this conversation. But yeah, it's
That's
so
so
cool. And
cool.
you know, I think like we first met because of, I believe it was through my therapist. Yeah, it was through my therapist, and she was
Mm-hmm.
like, "You need to work with Saga." And then, of course, we met, and I was like, "We're basically like we need to be friends, and this is like a
Mm-hmm.
real thing."
Mm-hmm.
Um, but also that session, I feel like it really spoke to, you know, tapping into those parts of you that you don't really like, you know, you're not in tune with all the time. And I think this work is similar to that, where it's like,
Yeah, I mean, I remember that session very clearly. It's funny
yeah,
because I feel like I remember every conversation I've had with anybody because it's in such this deep
oh,
psychic place, where like the details are very clear
right,
somehow. So I know exactly what you're talking about, and it's
right,
and then I realized that one was flow and one was form, and I was actually doing the same thing in both spaces.
right,
Only people could come and say, "Hey, be like building my brand or I'm putting together my manuscript or whatever it is. And I'd say, oh, okay, well, let's talk about what happened at age 6. You know what I mean? Because it was showing up
Right.
vibrationally in
Right.
the work. And I could read that. I could read that in the work. And then other times it would be like the opposite. Someone would say, hey, I'm here to, like figure out I'm at a crossroads in life and I don't know what to do, like what career should I? And I'd be like, you have to like, let's get this book that you're writing onto the page. What is this book? Because that's making these choices in the creative work is actually you making them in your whole system, and it's going to rewire your whole system to choose a new pattern. And so if we can do it in this small container of like the thing that you're writing or your social media feed, like anything, it'll kind of ripple out across your life.
100%. And I think like that's what's so cool about your work is like, and I think a lot of people aren't really, I think more and more people are starting to kind of get this awareness of like how everything is sort of interconnected. But, I think that that can be a little bit bizarre to some people where they're like, well, what does my career have to do with me at 6? Or,
Yeah.
what did
Mm-hmm.
like why would you like relate my dream to this like thing that happened in my childhood? And it's like those things do really speak to each other. And I think a lot of the work I've been doing, and I know you have as well, is this inner child work and
Mm-hmm.
reconnecting with this little person that's inside of us that still is there every single day and is trying
Mm-hmm.
to just express themselves. And so I realize the more I'm tapping into that little girl, the more I'm actually in my truest expression and I feel more in flow, as opposed
Yeah.
to sort of like running up against this rigidity or this wall.
Which is also a way of like protecting, protecting whatever happened for whatever reason that that little girl couldn't do what she wanted to do,
Right.
saying, hey, it's actually totally safe now to do this. I don't know. I'm thinking of you crafting.
Yeah.
I don't know if your crafting is your little girl's expression, but it
Oh,
really feels
definitely.
like that to me, where I really feel like, watching you put all these beads on.
Yeah, and it's honestly,
Um,
it's like it is a practice daily where I'm like, yeah, this is a little bit juvenile, and like, yeah, sure, I'm making this like weird shirt that I might never wear in real life,
yeah,
but it's that kind of practice that's actually gotten me into such a beautiful flow state in the past couple of months where I'm just feeling like, okay, things are juicing and I'm like feeling inspired. And sure, this shirt is really not the creative, like it's not like the
yeah.
career
And
thing,
it's
but
not
it
about
is
outcome. It's not about form, which is the
exactly,
whole thing, which is it's
exactly.
like it's actually about the process, and it's about being in that this is what needs to happen space right now. And then trusting it will actually lead to something, like as you repattern that, which you do by saying, I'm safe to be crafting this shirt for hours on end that I will never wear, that
It's
whatever.
funny that you're talking
I,
about that
I don't
too.
think they're weird. I think they're really cool for what it's worth. But yeah.
Well, thank you. But it's so funny you're talking about that because I literally have this necklace I made the other night that says it's upside down. Trust your magic. And so
Yeah.
it's just funny that we're talking about like, being in that flow state and then also trusting what's coming through,
Yeah.
not feeling like beholden to any sort of outcome and just like allowing
Yeah.
for whatever is your magic to be the outcome.
Uh-huh. One of the things that I talk about is form follows flow, which I don't know if you've heard form follows function, but that is this like famous saying by this architect Louis Sullivan, who I have a degree in architectural theory. So he was big in this chapter of my life. And he wrote this thing about form follows function, and all the designers and architects are like, yeah, form follows function, which has become like a very mechanical understanding of like, what is the function of this piece? Therefore, I should design it in order to allow like this person to, sit or stand or whatever it is. It's like, very mechanical.
Right.
But actually, he wrote this whole long paragraph about the function of the universe, essentially, like the life force. And he was basically saying that there's like a pulse, a beat in everything. It's this very animistic understanding of the world. And he's saying if you can listen to that and tap into that, the form is like the natural expression of that.
Mm,
So it's actually form follows flow, is what he's talking about. And
right.
like when you were sitting there crafting, doing your beads, it's you're in the flow and the form is the beads for now. But the bigger form, there's like something bigger afoot also. And just knowing that you will flow into that and you will be like, oh, well, that's surprising. That's totally, I didn't expect that that outcome.
Right. Yeah, and I think that that's a really strong and important point is like that trust factor. And that's really
Mm-hmm.
hard. I'm someone who runs incredibly anxious, and I really love having an idea in my head of like what the outcome is going to be, like what's the next thing that's coming.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really hard for me to like kind of release that grip, right, of like, okay, I can now drive this here and drive this there, and then this is going to be what's going to happen next. And by
Mm-hmm.
being in that kind of like flow, and just like releasing the control and having that trust in the universe that you're going to be put exactly where you need to be. um,
Yeah.
it's just such an important point. And I
Mm-hmm.
think practice for a lot of people, it's something that I've definitely been like really focused on, is just trusting what's to come and not really being so beholden to the outcomes.
Yeah. Yeah. Trust is a huge piece. And that actually reminds me of my third archetype, which is the secret garden,
Mm,
which is has to do with teenage teenage stuff mainly. I mean, you can the it happens at other points in life too, but it's very common to happen during the teenage years when your like authentic expression is coming out and you're playing with your form in the world. Who am I? What's my hairstyle? Who are my friends? How do I talk? And the world meets you with judgment or shame or even violence. So
mm-hmm,
there's something in the world that meets that authentic emergence and says, no, that is not okay. That is not acceptable. Put that back. It's too whatever, insert, wild, just, to anything. There's a judgment placed on it. And so the spirit part of it remains behind a closed door. So the metaphor really is that secret garden because inside there's this beautiful garden, so many beautiful flowers, but it feels like a secret, something you cannot share with the world.
mm,
And if you do share, something bad might happen. And the fear is like the emotion that really attaches to this archetype. Like something really bad is going to happen to me if anybody sees this thing.
right.
And the medicine for then sharing, because obviously the journey of that is to share the secret, but it's not all at once because that would, and it's not with the wrong people. It's you can't put your secret in front of judgmental or hateful eyes, otherwise that will send that part back into hiding. So you have to slowly emerge, first even to yourself, saying, oh, this is something that is important to me. This is something that, owning it, and then saying like, hey Maya, look at this thing, what do you think? I used to have this practice with a friend of mine called safe sharing, and we would just meet and share. A lot of it was writing, but yeah, anything that we felt kind of unsure about or were working on, it was like we really really trusted each other, and so we was like little buddy system where we would meet and share the secret things that we were working on, and just to have them received in a way that's like, yes, this is so beautiful, you're so amazing. It really, that's what's really healing for that archetype, and allows you to then come out of the closet essentially,
Right.
and share that medicine with the world.
I love that. I feel like even if that's not your full archetype, it's just something that we all struggle with, especially in
Mm-hmm.
the world. And so, yeah, I love that. I think that's such a cool practice to have, is like that person that you can rely on to, share
Yeah, the safe
that.
sharing.
Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
love that. That's really beautiful.
Yeah, but going back to trust, it's like for that, I mean, that archetype specifically, I feel has a lot of trouble with flow.
Right.
And because flow is unpredictable, flow is like inside the garden, and this perfectly polished external form, whatever it is, something that has like a door of acceptability has been built, and it's externally validated form. It's like, hey, for me it was like a, like fancy academic degrees and communications apprenticeship, like prestige, like look at this prestige, do you see how acceptable I am because I'm wearing this cloak of prestige? And so for me a lot of it is like, relinquishing that, and because I know that that's my mask, so to speak, as I share my authentic voice, it has to be very, anytime there's any kind of like hierarchical prestige element, that's like a warning signal for me, which is like, don't go there, because that's going to put you back into into that place of looking for some validation from someone else, from, looking for um, putting yourself in front of critical eyes and saying, do you love me, essentially, instead
Mhm.
of sharing it with loving eyes. Yeah,
Right, right.
knowing that you will be received.
So interesting. Um, I feel like we've talked about the first and the third archetype, and so I'm curious what the second archetype is.
Yeah, so I feel all roads lead to the second archetype. The second archetype is the heart of the whole thing, which is a heart wound.
Mm,
And basically, in the flow form work, if people come and sometimes, and you can be one, two, or three because they really correspond, like you can be all three, and I am all three
okay,
because they're like a layer cake. So they correspond to years of childhood development.
okay.
And it's like if you're a floating, if you have number one, which is the floating star seed one, if you had that root chakra level lack of safety, then we cannot do any of the other work until that is established.
Hmm.
So if the person comes with that energy in their field, then it's like this is what we have to um, establish first is safety, and it's safety in the body, safety in like nature and the earth, safety in home, creating this really clear loving anchoring point for the self. Um, and then also the secret garden is like sometimes people come in there and there's like this real, it's a very hard, like talk about the mask, like the mask can come in, it's a very polished exterior and you kind of can't get to anything. You can't get to anything else underneath until that is relinquished a little bit. That control system is relinquished. So those are often the entry points. But once you work through those, the middle years, which is ages roughly 4 to 11 or 12, I would say is the bracket. I call it the broken bridge,
Mm,
which I don't even like the name the broken bridge because it makes it sound like something about you is broken and like we are never broken, we are whole. But it's a bridge to something that really connected us as we were children, like that we really it's a heart wound, a loss of connection. So there's like a bridge to a sense of place or an identity or a person, some sort of rupture, some sort of loss in those middle childhood years when your heart center, when your heart chakra is expanding, something happens that causes so much pain and grief. And it's like the world has been saved, and then suddenly the rug is like pulled out from under the child, and the world is fundamentally reoriented. And it can be really overt or it can be really subtle. Like I've seen this as people saying, yes, that's when I lost my parent,
hmm.
or someone saying, that was the age when I got picked up by a police officer at school one day and my mom had been in a car crash, but she was fine and she was back the next day. But I believed in my child's consciousness, I believed she was dead
Right.
for 10 hours or something. And that's like nobody knew what had happened to her, right? So that is like a psychic, massive shift in the psyche. So even though mom came back home, safety was reestablished, like life went on. In the conscious mind, this event was totally forgotten about. It was a total like non-event for this person. As we start to do the work, this moment appears as a thing that fundamentally alters the fabric of space and time. And so it's really this like unmooring. And I think even a lot of times what is lost is so big, can feel so big to the child, and we're not actually at that point fully grown that we can't actually process it. We don't have that full heart center, and maybe we don't have the support of a grown up to help us process it. But something happens that is a heart wound and forces us to close our heart in some way or to build an artificial bridge of connection. So sometimes I see these like artificial bridges that are built to try and keep the thing that has been lost, versus um, really grieving the thing that has been lost. So all that goes to say, and this is the one that like people don't even realize this is really unconscious
Yeah.
stuff. Stuff goes into the unconscious. So people can really easily identify with like being number one or number three. But the whole point about number two is that it had to go away. It had to go somewhere into your psyche, into the wilderness of your psyche until you were able to process it again. And that's where I do a lot of the inner child work, actually. That's where I do a lot of journeying through the heart to find an inner child, to reclaim them, bring them back, and integrate them into the consciousness. And those are always the sessions where when we find the child, people start crying.
Oh yeah.
And it's so emotional. And for me, it's like that's good because that means that we found the child and connection has been created because it's a loss of connection. So tears mean that that connection has been made because the feeling is allowed to flow through. The
Right.
feeling is allowed to come.
Right. It's
Mm-hmm.
funny because I do remember, when you were building out these archetypes, and I went to you and I was like, I think I'm number one. I think I said number one. I was like, I think I'm the floating star seed. And you were like, oh no, you are very much in this broken bridge. And it was stuff that I hadn't really thought about. For me, it was incredibly subconscious. And I think what it kind of dialed into for me was this move that I had when I was 10, and moving from this place that was vibrant and fun and awesome. And I was in South Florida with a bunch of immigrants, and it just made sense to me as a human. And then moving to this place that was like super buttoned up and, New England cold and just a whole different culture. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I really kind of like just tucked it away and didn't really acknowledge it. And only now am I starting to see and do that work around it of like, okay, I have to write the letter. I have to close that chapter. I have to tell my
Mm-hmm.
inner child that she's safe and that, it's okay. And actually, I'm planning to go to, I haven't been back to South Florida since I was 16. So I'm planning to go back and just reconnect and,
That's so great. Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, that's one of the reconnect. That's the word, reconnect. Like we have to reconnect to that part, whatever it is. The thing that was lost, we have to reconnect to it. And often that can be really painful and really sad because it means acknowledging the grief over what we have lost.
right.
But then there's also so much medicine in that reconnection of like, what did that place hold for you? What was the magic?
Mm-hmm.
What did your child self find there that then she sort of had to leave behind? It's also like part of you was left behind, not just the place, but a part that belonged to that place.
Big time. Yeah. Some
Yeah,
major reclaiming.
that's so
Um,
beautiful. I'm so happy that you're doing that.
yeah, definitely. I'll keep you posted.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I'll be writing about it on holiday. But yeah, I guess like as a kind of final question or thought is, if people want to start to kind of explore this work and, go within and try to identify kind of exploring more of their journey, exploring more of themselves,
Mhm.
what would you suggest? What are kind of like your initial thoughts?
Well, I do one-on-one sessions, and the one that I always suggest starting with is a flow form repatterning session, which is 60 minutes. And that's basically coming in to say, you don't have to know what it is that you feel is stopping you from expressing your authentic truth. That's the work of the session, is to figure that out, is to sort of identify what is the first thing that wants to be come forward and wants your attention.
Mm-hmm.
And in that session, we identify, okay, what is that survival system that you're running? And it's that survival system is something that you learned as a child, to survive, but it becomes an internalized belief, behavior, and emotional system. So everything, all those three things that, you have certain ideas, whatever it is. This is just how you have to make money. This is what is required for love. This is like whatever external idea came in that you had to take on, and therefore I must stay in this job or behave like this in a relationship. And therefore I have to handle my constant burnout or the feeling that I'm never enough for this person. Like whatever it is, these things like become the entire ecosystem of
Right.
what we're living. And so if I can help to identify the pattern, then you start to see how that pattern is playing out in
Mm-hmm.
every arena of your life. And then we work to repattern, which is pretty easy intellectually. Like once you have conscious awareness of it, you can write in one sentence, this is your pattern, and then you just give the counter to that. So therefore, the job to be done is this is like my ex brand strategist brain, coming in and being like, the job to be done is the reverse of this pattern.
Right.
Um, but it kind of gives you direction. And then we also go into specific tools and actions that whether it's ritual, a lot of times it's like if it's you need more flow, then it's going to be something more flow based, like ritual or meditation or a visualization or affirmations, something more from the spiritual side.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's more like form based, because the kind of they appear as like either a block to flow or a block to form, then it's like, okay, write your artist statement, write your mission. What is your why? Give me the framework for what you want to leave in and what you want to leave out. Like it can be very strategic in that way. So we sort of mix and match what the action steps are based on what the pattern is and for you specifically.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like the first doorway. That's a pretty big doorway, though. And I feel like there's a lot of ways to more subtly do the work. I have these flower essences, for instance.
Love.
So creative juice, which I'm just looking at a bottle right now. Creative juice is for inviting in more flow.
Mm-hmm.
Express your truth is for really crystallizing your form in the world. And then through the crossroads is the one that is about repatterning a survival system. And because I used to do crossroads coaching sessions, and the way that I got into this evolution of the work was realizing, oh, when we're at a crossroads in life, it's because we are being asked to repattern a system. It's
Right.
like, are you going to keep cycling through the same thing that you think is safe that will lead you into another version of where you don't want to be? Or, and then we'll have another crossroads, a few years later down the line.
Right.
Or are you going to do the thing that feels really scary to your nervous system, like really, really scary, and step off that track, choose a different way, and yeah, move along into a different direction.
Totally.
So
Oh, it's like glittering. I just love, I feel like you work in such a beautifully organic way that's just very it's like very heart led, very emotion led, and like just energy led, and I think that's like really the future of this type of work. And yeah, like stepping into that flow always feels really really nice with you. So
thank
I
you. Well, I call it my heart work. I say this is
it
my
is,
heart work.
you can feel it, it's
Yeah,
definitely there. So um
yeah.
yeah,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much, this was so
Thanks, Maya.
beautiful.
It was really nice to be invited, nice to chat.
Yeah.
And may everyone find the form that follows their flow.
Amen, I love that.
Amen.